Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So, that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Laekan Zea Kemp. Laekan is an award-winning author of multiple books for children and young adults. Her titles include Somewhere Between Bitter and Sweet, An Appetite for Miracles, and Desert Song. She's here today to talk about her newest release, the CHISMOSAS Only Book Club. This instant classic middle grade coming of age novel is filled with friendship, identity, and the magic of bookstores. Say no more and add to cart, right, listeners? I can't wait to talk with her about this beautiful book, so we're going to get right to the episode. Laekan, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. The second I read the description of your book, I raised my hand as high as I could get to be able to talk to you about it. And after reading it, it's the book that just captures everything I love and believe about middle grade and books and reading and all of the things. And I can't wait to get to that part where we talk about the book and give listeners a sneak peek into it. But I always love to start the episode with a bit about you. So I'm hoping you could tell listeners a bit about you, the work you do, and the journey you've taken through children's literature.
Yeah, so I am a Chicana kidlit author living in Austin, Texas. I've spent pretty much my whole life in Texas, minus a year and a half in Florida, which I don't like to think about, but sometimes still have nightmares about. There's like lots of really big insects there,
There are.
which I was not used to. Yeah, so I mostly write about the Chicano and Mexican American experience, specifically here in Texas. And I'm also a teacher. So I'm an ESL teacher. I work with ninth and 10th graders. And I did that for many years and then took a break where I was able to write full time. But now I am back in the classroom, which has been a great source of inspiration for my work. And it was extra exciting that I was publishing, or I'm in the process of publishing 4 books this year that I get to celebrate along with my students, which has been a lot of fun. And yeah, the Chismosas Only Book Club is my first upper middle grade. I have a previous middle grade series that was straight up fantasy. Omega Morales and the Legend of La Lechuza was the first book in that series. And unfortunately, it was killed by the publisher
Oh,
after the second book, which happens more often than
yeah.
people realize. So now, I'm on to the next with which is the Chismosas Only Book Club. Characters are a little bit older. They kind of sit in that sweet spot between middle grade and YA. As we know, YA has been aging up over the past 10 years, and it's really hard to find books with characters in the 13, 14, 15-year-old range. And so that's what I wanted to focus on with Chismosas. And so they're rising high schoolers. And yeah, it's the most fun I've ever had working on a project for sure.
Well, it's the most fun I've ever had reading, quite frankly. And
Oh, yay!
yeah, and now to hear you talk about your background and to know that, you are surrounded by this age group, you are living with this age group, the book is so real. It is real and current and contemporary, yet timeless at the same time. No matter when someone would read this or pick this up, I think they could find themselves in that age group. And now I know why. Because like you're still in it. You're not just
Yeah.
remembering and looking back. You are in it and you are living it. You know the language, you know the trends, the things that are happening. This book just feels like you're stepping into their world. Like truly you're one of them in that book club. And it was just a joy. It was a joy to read.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So what inspired? We've given them a little bit of hint of what the book is about, but I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper into what inspired it beyond perhaps writing for this age group and give listeners a little sneak peek into what they might expect before we dive in deeper.
Yeah, so I always keep a running queue of ideas in the notes app in my phone. And several years ago, I met with an editor at a completely different publisher who was looking at relaunching paperback originals. And for those of us who grew up reading in the early aughts, you might remember like reading The Princess Diaries around that time. That's an example of like what a paperback original used to be. And so they asked me if I had any ideas that I thought would fit with the format. I had this idea for the Chismosas Only Book Club. It wasn't super fleshed out, but I at least had, you know, parts of the story I knew that I wanted for points of view. I knew that I wanted some elements of magical realism. But as I started thinking more about the books that I was reading in the early aughts and what YA used to be before it started to age up, I started thinking about the books that were really formative for me, including The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like the first um, major seed of like, in terms of format or formula that I was going to follow. So I knew that I wanted something contemporary. I knew that I wanted something with younger protagonists that was more similar to those paperback originals from the early aughts. Something similar in tone as well. I think around that time I was also reading the series Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging. So I wanted something really voicey and with an emphasis on humor, but also really sweet and tender, which you can really dig into when you're working with that particular age group. So I had all of those elements in mind, and then I just needed to figure out a way to put them all together. I didn't actually end up, working with that editor at that particular publisher. They actually ended up leaving. Um, but I still had this concept that I was really in love with and just super inspired to try to find a home for elsewhere. And so I started drafting. We ended up selling it on proposal. So I think maybe the first 30,000 words I had written, and we went out on a wide submission and it landed with Putnam. And it was the editor who took it to acquisitions who was the first person to refer to it specifically as upper middle grade. Because I was kind of pitching it as lower YA and maintaining the 14-year-old, age range of the protagonist was really important to me.
Mhm.
So I was really excited that they were also really committed to that. And one of the ways they did that was by saying, okay, we're going to market it as upper middle grade. So it's very clear that we're trying to fill this niche and sort of this chasm that exists for so many readers between like true middle grade books and YA. There's just not a ton of natural stepping stones for them. So it was important to me and the publishing team that we really emphasize that this book is meant to fill that need.
Yeah, and there really is a need. You know, as someone who used to work with little people and now still works with young people, but through their teachers, who's in children's literature every day, there really is a demand for this, like you said, this gap, this niche, this chasm that sometimes readers have to jump, and sometimes we can be hesitant to help them make the jump. And now we've got a book that we can really put squarely in their hands that not only is for their age group, but is going to, and I 100% say this with certainty, is going to then fuel more reading that comes after that. Like that's the beautiful side effect of your book, Laekan. You cannot help but get excited about the story, about the characters, yes, and we'll talk about some of the themes that might emerge there. But this thread of the bookstore, a little bit of magical realism, the way that books help us, shape us, bring us together in community. And the books that you mention throughout the book just I know are going to have a domino effect on readers where they can just keep on going once they get hooked into your book. I'd love to hear you talk about that aspect of the book, especially because at the end we do have this nice long list of books that readers could go to next that you mention in there. And I'd love to hear about that importance to you as well.
Yeah, so in addition to thinking about those characteristics of paperback originals, YA in the early aughts, and all of those things that I wanted to incorporate in the book, I was also, the teacher side of me wanting to figure out how to hook those reluctant readers, how to help, young people who maybe loved reading in elementary school, again, fell off into that chasm because there wasn't a natural stepping stone, help them fall back in love with reading and also model for kids reading as a social activity. Um, so one of the ways that I, came up with trying to do that was by having the characters in the book who are in a book club together read books from the current Latinx literary canon. So all the books they read are referenced by title. They are real books that you can actually go pick up in your local library or your local independent bookstore. And there's an entire book list at the back of Chismosas so that you can add all of them very quickly to your TBR. So I was hoping that when kids read, maybe they wouldn't identify with all of the characters to the same level, but maybe there's a one of the protagonists that they really connect with, and they know that that character read this particular book in the story, and they want to read it too. And yeah, I was just trying to think of entry points for them and gateways for them to get them excited about the idea of reading.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of those entry points and some of the themes because obviously reading and the book club between the four of them and I want to mention actually before we get there, the book club is really special because a member chooses the book or I should say is chosen perhaps for them. I won't reveal all of the secrets of that. And then one by one, they go through the same book. And so the book is literally passed along and held by each of the characters and experienced by each and kind of dropped in a surprise kind of way to get to it. So it's a slightly different format than, let's say, an adult reader might think of a book club where everybody comes together after reading their own books on their own. And after it gets passed around, which just makes the community and the connection, I think, between them come alive. Then they come together and have this beautiful ritual of talking about the book. Um, and in that framework, each of the characters they're going through their own stuff. They have their own lives, their own things that they're working through that perhaps the book can help or at least can support them in. And I'd love for you to talk about some of those themes that come up from each of them. Just to throw out a couple, we've got the idea of kids going through divorce, of having family dynamics, parents and grandparents. We've got period problems, which is, something that these upper middle grade readers are going to deal with. So many things. I'd love for you to touch upon that because there are so many entry points that any reader is going to find something in there that will connect them to this story.
Yeah, there are four protagonists, as I've mentioned, and each girl has a multitude of new experiences that they are trying to navigate. First and foremost, the transition to high school, which I think can be a very big and scary transition for kids. Um, you're having to make decisions about, your future, and that's kind of hard to do when you're only 13, 14
Yeah.
years old. So we have Anna who really struggles with anxiety and deals with that via skin picking. That's kind of how she regains control over her sense of overwhelm. And she is, also dealing with not being as great at school as she once was. And that kind of has a negative impact on her identity. She also has, these moments where she's butting heads with her mother quite a bit, who places a lot of responsibility on her. And then there's Kat, who is dealing with an irregular period. She gets her period for the first time, and her symptoms are much worse than any of her other friends have experienced, which is pretty isolating and confusing. She also has a lot of anger that she doesn't really know how to deal with or express because her parents are getting a divorce. They've had sort of an on again, off again relationship for years, and she sort of just had it at this point, and is, finding not very healthy ways to cope. Um, she also kind of like Anna seeks out control in those situations and um, doesn't like when she's not in charge. And then there's Mari, whose mother is dealing with chronic kidney disease. And they had this initial conversation about her mother's diagnosis when she was in the middle of reading a book. And so now she has this sort of residual anxiety every time she tries to dive back into reading. And it becomes something that she avoids and only sort of pretends to do in the book club to appease her friends, and so she's struggling with that as well. And then she also ends up learning a family secret that sort of upends her identity and sense of self. And then there's Sophia, who is queer and is actually really looking forward to going to high school because she thinks it's an opportunity to be more herself and have less constraints on her identity. But it's tough because at home, she has a grandmother who is pretty closed minded and not very accepting of anything that's different, really. Not just Sophia's queerness, which is currently a secret at the beginning of the book. But also the fact that Sophia is really into witchcraft and magic and loves nature and all things to do with that. So each girl is struggling with very different things, but the magic of the story is that Kat's family has owned a bookstore in this little town that they live in for generations. And the original owner of the bookstore, Milagro, she haunts the bookstore, allegedly, and seems to be providing these sort of divine deliveries to the girls in the form of books, of stories that seem to be exactly what each of them needs, exactly when they need it. And again, those books that they are receiving are real books that readers can go and read. There's no spoilers in the Chismosas Only Book Club. Every book is, obviously referenced with the utmost admiration, but there's no spoilers. There's nothing really pertaining to the plot of any of those books. It's mostly referencing themes. So, what are the girls sort of learning about themselves and about life after reading these stories? And I'm hoping that just kind of skimming the surface of what those books are about will be enough to get readers interested in wanting to read them more. But yeah, growing up, I had a best friend, and her older sister was a big reader. And after her older sister would finish a book, because she was obviously the coolest person that we knew, we always wanted to read whatever she had just finished reading. But there was only one copy. So she would give the copy to my best friend, and then my best friend would give that copy to me. And sometimes we would just lounge on the couch together, waiting for the other person to finish the book or to get to a specific part so we could like scream about it together.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to really capture the social aspect of reading with the book club, but then also capture the medicine of stories and how healing stories can be for us.
Oh, you just spoke my love language right there. That is really why I became an educator and ultimately a teacher educator. I've just had countless experiences in my own life, starting in childhood, where books were medicine. I felt better. I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt a solution. Books, books are just always there. They don't judge. They're always there with a little window of opportunity. And one line, or at least a part of a line in the book that I highlighted for me that really captured it was reading someone else's story was just as important as writing your own. And it's that connection, that that understanding and just that broadening of who we are and what we think that comes when we read stories and we open ourselves to the stories of the people around you. And you talked about some of the things that the girls were facing. However, I do want to mention that it is still great fun, even though there
Yeah.
are some pretty heavy things they're going through. And part of that fun is just in the age group and the way that you bring it to life in such a real way. But I also want readers to know the fun that happens when suddenly there's a text message thread in the book, or a comic panel, or pages of the sketchbook, or my favorite, the spells and the remedies in the book. The format of it, I think, is just as fun and inviting as the words that you have written. And I just want listeners to know that I'm going back and making some of those tinctures and concoctions for myself, Lakin.
Oh, fun. Yeah, I mean, again, so the novel that I wrote before this came out in 2023. So it's been quite a while since I published a novel length work. But that book was An Appetite for Miracles, and it was a novel in verse. And after writing that, I have just been thinking a lot more about white space and using white space to hook reluctant readers. So obviously, this book is told majority in prose, but in Mari's chapters, because she has a hard time expressing her emotions verbally, she often turns to her sketchbook. And so in her POV chapters, we have these really hilarious and zany graphic novel panels. So we've got this visual component that comes up every 4 chapters. And then for Sophia, we have the chapter headings that include a spell related to whatever the theme of that chapter is, whatever she's working on or struggling with. So not only does it help differentiate the voice between the characters a little bit, but talking again about it being a bridge book, I think for reluctant readers who are a little intimidated by prose, maybe who have never read an entire novel all the way through, have not quite built up that stamina yet, I think it's a good bridge book for them to build up that stamina reading prose while also having some of those breaks built in that are really visually interesting.
Yeah. I can tell that you put your author hat on and your reader hat on and your
Yes.
teacher hat on as you were writing this draft, because
It's hard not to, yeah.
yeah, it's just appealing from all of those angles. Now, as you think about the book going out into the world and getting into readers' hands, what is your hope for the book or for those readers who get to access it?
I have so many hopes related to this book. I think initially I just wanted to capture for readers of this generation the feeling that I had as
Mm,
a teenager reading things like The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, Angus Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging, The Princess Diaries. So I just wanted to capture like the sweetness and the humor of those kinds of stories and expose kids to that. Obviously, as I've been talking about a lot, I really want reluctant readers to um,
yeah.
be entertained and encouraged to continue reading, to develop a love of reading because of this story. Like that's the highest hope and would be the highest honor, of course. But I think also in regards to that, I think it's so important, not just for kids emotionally, to be able to experience the kinds of stories that I did when I was their age, or to fall in love with reading because like we said, it's so good for you and it's medicine and it's healing and all of these things. But again, as a teacher, it's so critical right now that we get kids reading again because a
Yeah.
lot of them are not. Um, and I feel like my job as a writer for young people is to figure out ways to fix that. Um, and as a teacher, it's my job to figure out ways to fix that. So I hope that I am doing my part with this book and trying to find a solution to this larger issue
Yeah.
and helping those gatekeepers, teachers, librarians, parents, by giving them something that they can hand a kid that hopefully will be the thing that kind of sparks that love again.
Yeah. I feel like as a fellow educator, there really is no higher calling, right? Other than to share that love and to give them that gift and that love of reading that just makes everything better, in my opinion. Once you unlock that for yourself, that's a beautiful hope. And this book will do it. This book will definitely do it.
Thank
And
you.
I'm really excited because Putnam has given me a couple of physical copies of the book so that the teachers, the librarians, the parents, the adults listening to this podcast, we can experience a book club just like the Chismosas book club here. So, listeners, if you are interested in getting your hands on a copy of this book so that you can read it first and then share it with all of the kids in your care, join me. Join me for a book club where we will pass this book along across states, across borders, across everything, and experience what it would be like to have this kind of connection with books. So you can leave your interest in the show notes to the episode or reach out and find me on social media. I will post about that soon. But I'm excited, Laekan, to jump in, just like as I was one of the protagonists, and share this book first with teachers in hopes that it gets to as many students as it can. It's just a beautiful book, and I'm so grateful that you came on to talk about it today, truly.
Thank you so much.
Now, where is the best place that listeners can find you so that they can maybe go through your backlist as well or stay in the know for the books that are still coming in the future for you too?
So I am at Laekan Zea Kemp on all platforms. That's Laekan Zeakemp or laekanzeakemp.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there, which is probably the best way to stay connected with me.
Okay. So I will put links to both of those in the show notes. I'll also, of course, put links to where we can find your book. And I'm honored to be part of the team who hopefully is spreading the beauty of this book everywhere. It's just wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so much. I really appreciate it.
And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you loved what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of Kid Lit Love. Thanks for listening.